which could be seen only by leaving the orderly confines of Abuja. An estimated 90 million Nigerians, around half of the country's citizens, live in extreme poverty. The country has 2% of the world's population, but 14% of its maternal deaths, with one Nigerian woman dying every 13 minutes from preventable problems with pregnancy and childbirth. The challenges do not end at birth. 1 in 10 Nigerian children dies before reaching age 5, and 1 in 3 is chronically malnourished. With a population projected to double by 2050, the number of people facing hunger, disease, and premature death looks set to increase. Adding insult to injury, Nigeria's potential is as evident as its challenges. I loved experiencing its world-class arts scene and vibrant intellectual life, and admire its countless entrepreneurs who thrive despite the rough terrain. Most countries struggling with extreme poverty and unmet promise are not major oil producers. Nigeria is the world's 12th largest. In 2008, Nigeria was churning out oil worth over $200 million a day. The government could have been saving millions of lives if it ran the oil sector properly and channeled the earnings into reducing poverty and creating jobs. The more I learned, the more outrageous the situation seemed. In fact, the cause for outrage was just getting started. In 2010, Goodluck Jonathan became Nigeria's president, right as oil prices reached historic heights. I had finished graduate school by then and was working for a non-governmental organization, NGO, that promoted transparency and good governance in the oil sector. Our aim was to help developing countries avoid the kinds of corruption and missed opportunities that too often accompany oil wealth. I was in Nigeria every few months, working on various small projects. We trained local journalists to monitor some of the more technical aspects of the oil industry, pushed state governments in the oil-producing Niger Delta to reveal details about how they spent their money, and offered comments on various versions of an industry reform bill that sat for years gathering dust in the legislature. It was mostly useful stuff, but with each subsequent trip I made, the project seemed more and more like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. In 2012, a scandal broke and revealed that the government had paid fuel importers for billions of dollars worth of gasoline and diesel that never actually entered the country. But then no senior officials lost their jobs, no one was convicted of wrongdoing in court, and many of the alleged culprits kept doing business with the government. Around the same time, the government began awarding huge and oddly structured contracts to secretive local oil companies with hardly any industry experience. Stories of backroom payoffs, stolen cargo loads of oil, and other crimes grew more frequent and convincing. The mythology around the oil minister grew too. Friends and acquaintances traded stories about her apparent neglect of important industry functions, the crew of loyal henchmen who gathered in her house at night, and her plans for using the booming oil sector to benefit herself and the president. During this time, you'd walk into Abuja's Hilton Hotel, the country's unofficial deal-making headquarters, and it was just throbbing. Power players and their retinues clustered around the elevators, heading upstairs to the private suites where various bigwigs held court. Businessmen and women from around the world staked out corners of the lobby's piano bar to hold meetings with the previously bit part players who suddenly commanded serious wealth. Large paintings of the petroleum minister could be purchased at the hotel's tourist shop, alongside overpriced traditional clothes and jewelry. 5-figure watches and designer bags became standard attire for the drivers, security guards, and mistresses who crowded the hallways. You could smell the money in the air. Despite all the bling and all the stories, I struggled to pin down exactly what was going on. The tales of theft and misdeeds, like the one about the servant making off with a suitcase of cash, were difficult to confirm. The government explained away accusations of corruption with indignant statements and dumps of data. Friends of mine who worked in government accused the opposition party of fomenting rumors to vilify the president and his allies. Other top officials spoke the language of reform and commanded international acclaim.